Hi, my name's Adam Jacobs and I'm Principal Microsoft Architect for Polycom. And in this video, we are going to go through a step-by-step deployment of the RealConnect hybrid solution. This is comprised of four separate steps that we're going to go through. The first thing we're going to go through is we're going to activate the Polycom Cloud Service Portal. Then we're going to deploy the Cloud Relay. Once we've done that, we're going to configure the specific settings on our on-premises Skype for Business server. And then finally, we're going to complete the provisioning for our Office 365 tenant and activate the RealConnect hybrid settings. So before we start, we can see here we got two emails. So we placed an order with Polycom, and that's generated two emails. The first email there that we can see is inviting us to activate the cloud portal, and then the second email there is our license. So in the first step, we're going to go in here and we're going to activate the portal. So we go into our email and we're going to activate the account. And I can now sign in. Okay, so we're signed into our portal and we're signed in with enterprise administrator privileges. And the important thing for us here is that we can go in and we can create a new device. And that device, in our case here, will be for our RealConnect, our Cloud Relay. So let's go ahead and get our Cloud Relay configured and set up. So I'm going to go into VMware here. And I downloaded earlier an OVA version of the Cloud Relay. So we're going to deploy that. So let's go in here, deploy OVA template. And if we go into our downloads here, we can see our file. And we are going to leave the default name. I am going to thin provision. And I'm going to power on after it's deployed. So whilst our deployment is wrapping up here, we're going to do a network test. And the network test is going to allow us to understand whether or not we can actually have the right connectivity from where our Cloud Relay is deployed to our Azure service that we're running. And we're going to actually do a connectivity test specifically for the Azure service bus that we're running. So we're running a test-NetConnection. We're using our service bus name here, and we're using a specific port as well. So let's just run that and see what we get back. And the important part of this test here, or the result of this test, is specifically this here. So if we look at the last result where it says TCP test succeeded. So if our ICMP test fails, that's totally fine. But the important part is that the TCP test has succeeded successfully. So what we know by that is that the Cloud Relay will be able to communicate with our Azure Service Bus and therefore deploy correctly. So we are now up to 87% or 88%. We are going to come back shortly and we are going to finish off giving our Cloud Relay its IP address settings. Okay, so our relay has deployed and it should now be turning on. So let's just open up the console. and it's just booting, which is great. And the Cloud Relay itself is running. It's running a very vanilla set of services. Basically, it's got enough that it needs to connect to our service and download the applications that we as a customer are entitled to. So I'm going to sign in, and the credentials by default are Polycom and Polycom. We're going to be prompted to change our password, so we'll put in the Polycom password again, and I'm going to put in my new password and just confirm it. Okay, so what we need to do here is we need to first of all configure our network settings. So let's go into configure and configure our network. The first thing we're going to want to do is change it from DHCP to static addressing. So let's do our static setup. And because we got a DHCP address, we've got some settings in here already. I'm going to give it a new IP address. Let me just check my IP that we've got here. And we're going to give it 133. And the subnet mask is fine, as is the default gateway. Okay, so we've got a static address. We've got everything looking good here. The next thing we need to do is we need to configure our DNS. So we're going to put in our domain, and we're going to use our DNS server here. And the DNS server needs to be able to resolve public addresses, specifically us over the internet, so our service bus, and also it needs to be able to resolve the address for our Skype for Business server as well. And we're going to give it this address here. We only have one DNS server, so that's fine. We're going to just put that in. Now we can change the host name. We don't need to. We can leave it as default. But if you wanted to deploy multiple instances of the Cloud Relay, then you may have different names for each version. In this case, we're going to leave it as default. Okay, so let's go into our support tools here, and let's try pinging an address. So I'm going to try pinging my pool. Okay, so we can see there that we got a response, and my Cloud Relay is able to resolve the internal addressing. So our DNS is correctly configured, so that's good news. We'll come out of that. Okay, now the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to actually want to register this Cloud Relay with the portal that we activated earlier. So to do that, we're going to want to integrate with the Polycom Cloud. Now, we got back a registration code from the cloud, and we're going to use that code to register our Cloud Relay. So if we go back into the portal here, we're going to add our Cloud Relay, and we're going to need that registration code. So let's bring back our VM, and we'll just bring it down here, and it's 601. Oops. Sorry, 601.56223. 56223. And we're going to give it a friendly name. I'm just going to give it the same name as the host name. But again, we could have different names so that we knew if we had multiple, we knew which was which. So I'm going to save that here. And that's now successfully saved. And you'll notice that right now, the status is offline because we haven't actually checked in yet. So let's go back to our VM. And we're going to OK that screen. And we're going to go to integrate again. And we've now performed the integration. If we go back to the page, we should hopefully see some more details in a moment. So the first thing we can see is the serial number. I can now also go and see my application status. And we can see that the applications are starting to be deployed and are up and running. Let's go back here and do another refresh. We can now see the IP address, the private IP address of our Cloud Relay, and we can also see the software version. We're still not quite online, so if we just wait a little bit longer, and there we go, we're now online, and our Cloud Relay is successfully communicating with the Cloud Polycom portal. So in the next part of this video, we're going to go through our Skype for Business server configuration. And the first thing we need to do here is we need to check that we've got anonymous user access enabled. And obviously we need an edge server that's deployed as a part of this solution. So if we just go in here and we have a look, we can see that this tick box is already enabled. So that's good news. That means that anonymous access is allowed through our edge server. So we've done that piece. The next piece we're going to do is we're going to create a Skype for Business user account that we're going to assign to our Cloud Relay. So I'm going to go into users and computers, and I'm going to create a new dedicated account here. So if we go here and we go to new, and we're creating a user account, and I'm going to call this user account Cloud. I'm going to do this all lowercase, Cloud Relay. And our username here is going to be Cloud Relay as well. And let's make sure, oh, we've got a typo there, we don't want that. Okay, Cloud Relay at polycom-mslabs03.com, click next. And we can put in, actually we can put in any password we like here because the trusted application is going to be used to authenticate. So we'll just leave that. We'll define a password anyway. And then next we're going to go in and we're going to Skype enable that user account. So let's go to enable users here within the control panel. And I'm going to go and find the account we just created, which was the Cloud Relay account. Cloud Relay. And there's our account. And we're going to assign it to our pool. Now, it's important to note here that we have assigned, or we are going to assign this account to pool 01. So pool 01 must be defined as our Skype for Business server within our RealConnect hybrid settings, and we'll do that in a moment. I'm just going to select Cloud Relay as my username, and I need to have a minimum of PC to PC defined. This is sufficient, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enable that account. So now we've created our dedicated Skype for Business account for the Cloud Relay. We're going to go and we're going to create our trusted application. So let's bring up our notes here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to define our application FQDN, and we're going to call it Cloud Relay.polycom-mslab03.com, and we can really call it what we like. We just need to make sure that when we create our certificate, the common name is the same for the certificate request. So Let's paste that in here. And this PowerShell we've taken out of our admin guide. And the next thing that's very important is we need to make sure that we put the pool where our Skype for Business account is homed. So in our case here, it's pool01.polycom-mslab03.com. Okay, so we're going to take the first line of PowerShell here, and we're going to paste that into here. And we are going to say yes, because this is not added to the domain. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to define the port that we're going to use and the application ID. And then finally, we are going to publish these changes into our topology with this final command. The next thing we're going to do after this is we are going to go ahead and we're going to check within Topology Builder, and we're just going to see the changes that we've made. So I'm just going to download the latest topology. I'll say yes there. And if all things go well, we should now have our new trusted application. I'm going to overwrite my file here, our new trusted application created. So if I just scroll down, and I'm using Skype for Business Server 2015, and I'm going to close that back up and look at my trusted application servers, and we now have a new trusted app defined, and that trusted application is our cloudrelay.polycom-mslab03 trusted app. So that's great. So our trusted application is now complete. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our certificate. So if we go into IIS on the same server, and we're on our front end here, we can go ahead and we can create a domain certificate. So we're going to use our local CA to sign the certificate request. So as we mentioned earlier, we need to take that same FQDN as our common name. So we're going to just copy that from here. I'm going to put in Polycom, that's my organization, city, state. Okay, click next. And I'm going to select my CA. And I'm going to give it a friendly name of Cloud Relay and today's date. Okay, and I'm going to finish. So we now have a certificate that's been created on our server here. And we're now going to export it. And what's important here is we need to export the certificate, and it has to contain our private key. So I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to export the cert, and I'm going to just export it to my downloads folder here. We'll just call that Cloud Relay. And we need to remember this password because we're going to need it later. And I'll click OK. And we should now, in our downloads folder, have our certificate. And if we look in there, there we go. We have our certificate, the Cloud Relay certificate just in there. So now we've got our certificate. Let's go back to our notes here. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to check that we have dial-in conferencing configured. Now, this is something that may typically be deployed already within the environment. If we go in here, we can see very quickly whether this has been configured or not. If we go into conferencing here, we can see that there is a dial-in access number that's defined, which is good news. and we can see that's enabled on this pool here. So we do have a conferencing auto attendant defined and PSTN Dial-in conferencing enabled. So now we've completed our trusted application configuration and we've got the certificate, we now can go ahead and we can provision our tenant and complete the settings associated with our Cloud Relay. So we're going to sign in with our Office 365 global admin details, and they happen to be cached here, and we're signing in with the account we used earlier. So we're going to accept, and we're going to authorize. So we're going to go through that same process that we had previously, where we go through CSP. I'm going to remove the delegated admin rights because we don't need that. And I'm going to go back and we're now going to provision our tenants. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to go back to our email and we're going to find our license key. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy my license key and I'm going to paste that into the license key field and put in my email address. And let's just check everything here. We want to make sure it's set correctly. 5002. And I accept. Okay, so we've now activated our license and we can see we've got 5 licenses. And because this is a RealConnect hybrid license, we can now go in and we can manage our hybrid settings. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to select my certificate. So let's go back, take our certificate that we created earlier, and I'm going to just copy that here. And I'm going to paste it into my downloads folder on this, and we're going to browse to that file within downloads, and I'm going to put in my password, and that was the password when I created the certificate. I'm going to put in my Skype user that we created earlier, which was Cloud Relay, my SIP domain, and the front-end address, which was pool01.polycom-mslab03.com, and port is going to be 5061, and my email address is adam@microsoft.com. Okay, so let's just check everything. We've got our certificate, we put the certificate password, our domain, our front end, the port, and then finally the global admin email address. So let's click submit. This is going to get pushed to our Cloud Relay. So all of the certificate information, the front end's configuration, everything's going to get pushed across via Azure Service Bus and the messaging that we've configured over to our Cloud Relay. So we should then have everything configured for our Cloud Relay to resolve our Skype for Business meetings. Okay, so our configuration is completed. The next thing I'm going to do before I move on is I'm going to take the tenant key for this tenant. Now you'll see this SIP address here. The front part of the SIP address is our tenant key. So I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to paste that into our notepad here because we're going to need that when we configure the meeting invitation. So let's just go to the notes we've got over here. I'm going to minimize this, and our invite. You can see at the bottom here, we've got a template for the invite, and this is also in our admin guide. So we're going to paste that into here because we're going to need that when we define our meeting template, which we can do next. So we've now got our meeting configuration template. So let's go in and copy that. And we have this window open here. So let's just go back here, make sure we understand. So we go to conferencing, meeting configuration, and we open that up. And we're going to put that into our custom footer text. Okay, let's commit that. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create a Skype for Business meeting invite. So let's go back over here, and I'm going to go and browse to my on-prem. I'm just going to use Outlook Web Access here. And I'm going to sign in, and I can sign in here with effectively any on-premises account. So I'm going to use this account here, which I happen to know is on-prem. And I am going to create in my calendar, I'm going to create a Skype for Business meeting. Now our custom template hasn't come across yet, but the important thing here is that we've generated a conference ID, and we're going to use that conference ID as a way to troubleshoot and check to see whether our cloud relay is deployed correctly. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to go back into our notes here, and we are going to go to our front end. We're going to go back to our notes here, and we are going to update this troubleshooting. So on the end here, we can see our conference ID. So I'm going to put the conference ID we created. I'm also going to put in the IP address for our cloud relay, which was 10.228.9.133 off the top of my head. Let's just scroll up and check that. Yeah, that's good. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to paste that into a browser over here. So let's go back and we paste that. We can see that the cloud relay is working. It has resolved our focus URI successfully, which means that when we dial, this will get resolved and we'll be able to join our on-premises meeting. So the last thing we want to just double check is we want to make sure that our meeting template is updated. So if we just close that meeting and discard it, and we create a new one, we can now see that our footer information is updated, and we know that if we dial our tenant key dot the conference ID, in this case 58677 at x.x.x.x, that will dial through and join successfully. So with that, we've now successfully completed our configuration for RealConnect Hybrid.